But it is kind of crazy that I identified as Latino, and then one day I woke up and all of a sudden, like, someone else has decided that now I'm Latinx.
Frankie, welcome to POVz. Having you here in person is such an honor. For anyone watching, Frankie did a panel with us during COVID all about politics and media, and so having you here today is just such a full circle moment.
Oh, I'm excited.
I'm so happy you're here.
Thanks.
Every episode on POVz, to really get the conversation going, we start with somewhat of a controversial question.
Okay.
You ready to go?
I think so.
Let's do it. Okay, Frankie, I know so much of the work that you do surrounds the importance of representation. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite quotes, I think Beyonce said it once, is, "You can't be what you can't see." And so I want to ask you, can you be what you can't see?
Sure, I think it could be possible. However, I think it might be a little more hard because with the things that you're seeing and the entertainment that you're taking in, of course, you're trying to channel all of those things. And sometimes when you're watching something, it can like spark an interest, or it can give you like a new like confidence or something. So I don't know, that's a tricky one. But I think yes, but I think it helps if someone else is kind of laying the blueprint for you and you're able to like take bits and pieces of things that you like or see other people doing and kind of apply that to your life and see what works for you.
Well, let's go deeper. What did that blueprint look like for you? Did you have something to look to or someone?
I think most of the stuff I pulled from or were a lot of like women in comedy. So I loved growing up watching sitcoms. And so like Julia Louis-Dreyfus or like Lisa Kudrow, like those types of performances. So that's kind of like what I would pull from as like, this is what's funny. Or like Raven Simone and like That's So Raven was like huge for me. So I would like go to school and act out the scenes that I saw like the previous night. So for me, the inspiration came from like just funny women.
Amazing. I love That's So Raven.
I know. I love her.
It's on Disney Plus, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I need to go back and watch.
Yeah, they're pretty fun.
That probably helped foster your love of entertainment and seeing those parts of yourself. Did you ever yourself feel represented on screen?
Only once, and it was the little brother in Ugly Betty. It was like the first time I had ever seen someone who looked like me, who sounded like me, who acted like me, and was part of like a family that was very similar to mine. But other than that, I can't think of another one since.
And did that spark something in you? Do you remember watching and thinking to yourself that you did feel represented?
Yeah, you know, it's not, and it wasn't just for myself, but it was like for my entire family. Like for my family to sit down and watch something and say like, oh, like this is, you know, kind of like about us, or this is something that we can relate to, just because there wasn't and still aren't a lot of family-driven sitcoms led by like a Latino family.
Frankie, I know so much of what you do today is really around increasing representation for maybe the lack thereof that you felt growing up. And I remember listening in an interview that you said if you were to leave a legacy behind, you would want it to be that people felt more of a comfortability in being themselves. What led you to this particular moment where you started increasing that representation for others? In between that moment where you saw yourself represented in Ugly Betty up until now, what do you think sparked that journey to really go into television and music and film to increase that representation?
I am truly just trying to be my most authentic self, and that's gonna shift and that's gonna change as I gain more interest or get older and all these different things. What makes me the most happy is that where I am right now, people are able to relate to, and people are able to find things to say like, I found the confidence in myself because of something that your character did. I think as an actor, those weren't really things I ever thought about because I was literally just doing the grind and trying to get to where I wanted to be. And then all of this other stuff of people relating to you, I mean, that's like the biggest perk of all, right?
And it sounds so simple, right? Just be you. But I oftentimes find that that is incredibly challenging. I know I've struggled with just the notion of being myself.
Yeah.
Whether it be social media, whether it be comparison culture, I feel like I'm always trying to be someone I'm not. And I feel like my life's quest has been to figure out my truest self. Mm-hmm. What did that journey look like for you? And are there still moments where you're doubting your most authentic self?
Every day. I mean, every day you like wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I today? Who am I today? But I think it all just goes back to finding the way like people have reached out and say, like, have said, your character gives me inspiration. I'm also doing the same thing to other people that I loved and watched. I try to let those thoughts come in and then quickly release, because at the end of the day, nobody has anything figured out. So really, we can't look to one person to say like, that is perfection. I mean, some people have gotten close, and Beyonce's amazing.
The closest, if anything.
But of course, like at the end of the day, like, you know, she's gonna have the same problems all of us are gonna have. And I try to let those like intrusive thoughts just quickly come and then leave, because they don't really serve you, and you just gotta do your own thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
my therapist has taught me that.
Yeah.
Like, emotions are what they are, but they are fleeting.
Yeah.
So let them come in, but don't make them mean everything.
Yeah, one of the biggest lessons I have learned is like, just do your own thing. And I learned it from my nephew, who's 5 years old, and he has autism, and he does like a lot of like these little rituals and stuff. And so there was like one day he likes to line things up, and he was like lining up all of his cars. And I was like, what is he doing over there? My mom was like, he's just doing his own thing. You just gotta let him go. And I was like, he's like the happiest person just doing that minor task, and like no like other thing someone was saying or doing was going to affect what he was doing at that time. And for me, that's like the biggest lesson. It's just like, you can cancel out all the noise and just do your own thing.
Absolutely. That painted a picture of your nephew for sure for me. Aww. I wish sometimes it was always as simple as that, right? Just let everyone do their thing.
Yeah.
But there's so many added pressures. Do you feel, being the first openly gay character in the High School Musical franchise, do you find that to be overwhelming or coming along with a certain amount of pressure?
Yes and no. Like, yes, if I like really sat and thought about all of the things that, like the added pressures or the conversations people were gonna have or the things that they were gonna say, like, of course you can like deep dive and be like, oh my gosh, the pressure. But I really don't, because at the end of the day, I really am just like navigating this world as best as I can.
Absolutely.
Just like as anybody else. And so I try not to think about like the pressures too much.
Do you feel that playing a character like Carlos has helped you discover more about your authentic self? Or do you feel like playing a character masks some of that in the process?
Ooh, if anything, I think it has helped me learn more about myself at that specific age in high school, because I'm pulling a lot from that experience, because I was a theater kid. I wanted to be like in charge of everything. I wanted to like direct all the shows. And that's really all I cared about as a teenager. I was like, what show are we doing next season? Like, what role do I want? And I think that's very similar to Carlos. And so if anything, it helped me really identify that I really was like a theater kid in like a small farm town. Because when you're like the only one, it's like a little isolating, and you're like, okay, like I have this like secret thing that I like to do, but I have to like pretend that like I also have an interest in high school football to like also, so it's a chance to hang out with my friends. Do you know what I mean? When I had no interest in being there.
I relate to that in more ways than you could ever understand.
But you're there for the social aspect, right? But like you have to like pretend like you're like into the game or whatever. But
in what ways are you not like Carlos?
He's a little more, he says a little more of what's on his mind without really thinking, I think. And sometimes that gets him in trouble, but I think that's what also makes it so funny, you know? But I don't know if I would ever be as bold as that. Like there's lots of—
So you're not unfiltered?
No.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, sometimes it'll slip out, but I'd say like 9 times out of 10, it's like, it's being filtered through like a, maybe that's not the best thing to say right now.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
What do you hope that young people who watch the show take away from befriending Carlos and your character?
Just comfortability in being themselves, or the comfortability in trying new things. You know, like Carlos, we have seen, he started out as like the student choreographer who like didn't really sing, or his role was there to teach the choreography. And now his journey over the last 2 seasons has kind of been him stepping into the spotlight, but also like proving to himself that he deserves to be there. So I hope it just gives people a sense of like confidence to like try new things and put yourself out there.
Absolutely. And season 3, I've started. It's amazing. I love that you can see Carlos's character development. And I think you really see that he's multidimensional. And going back to our conversation on representation, I feel that in the past, or at least in the very early stages of representation, when you take a queer character and put them on screen, it's typically in a very tokenized role, right? The gay best friend, or someone who plays a very sidekick character part. But what I love about HSM is that Carlos has this arc, right? Started as the choreographer, finally finds his voice, ends up in these spaces where he really is the main character in a lot of ways. Carlos isn't just merely on screen or playing a part, but really is increasing that representation for so many. What does that mean to you, and what does representation feel like to you?
I think it's just that, like, and I say this all the time, it's just those little reminders that whatever your specific thing you're going through, whatever you're battling, it's other people are going through it too. And so I think when you see that on screen, it does really make you feel less alone or isolated. When I do see it, like a character go through something on screen or something that maybe it's a situation I had gone through, and I'm just like, oh wait, this is something that I went through. How are they handling it? And of course, like, you're also looking at it with like judgmental eyes too. You're like, oh, I would have done that differently. But I think that's the whole fun in like watching a show, is that, like, you know, they're gonna get into trouble.
Absolutely. For the Gen Zers who are gonna be watching this, that are definitely on their journey to finding their voice, and maybe are going through a moment that you were, when maybe you were getting ridiculed or feeling less than for just hanging with the girls and going against some of those gender norms and stereotypes, what would you say to a young kid out there kind of going through what you were going through in those moments?
Life is what you make it. And at some point, you're gonna be out on your own. You're gonna be making your own decisions. You're gonna get to do the things that you want to do. Like I said, I grew up very religious. So, like, of course, like, you know, the things I had interest in, like any type of like glitter type thing, anything that was considered for girls was just like a big no-no. And so now in my adult life, I feel like I'm like trying to like make up for everything.
Absolutely.
And it's just kind of silly, because at the end of the day, it's just things that like make you happy. So I just say, like, it gets better. And like at some point you're gonna get to like be in the driver's seat and make the decisions for yourself. And when you do, it's gonna be amazing.
I think so many of us are trying to right the wrongs of our inner child throughout our lives. And so that's so valid and normal. So thank you for bringing that up. And I couldn't have summarized it better than that Hannah Montana lyric that you dropped, which is, life is what you make it.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
It was the perfect thing to bring us to our next segment here on POVz, where, Frankie, we're gonna send you some texts. We're gonna start introducing some different POVs from the larger Gen Z community. So keep an eye on your phone and we'll get rocking and rolling.
I love it.
Let's do it.
Stop remaking classics like High School Musical. Nothing will ever be better than the original.
That's a hot take.
That is a hot take.
What do you think?
It makes me want to roll my eyes. Look, I get it. We all have things that we attach ourselves to from our childhood. But one thing that always did make me laugh is when the cast was announced for the show, the first season, we got a lot of comments that were just like, stop ruining my childhood. It's like, this is gonna ruin your entire childhood. Being like High School Musical being made into a TV series is gonna ruin your entire childhood. We want things that feel nostalgic, because there's a sense of safety there. And I think that's what our show does well. It has all this stuff that you love about the original franchise, but it's being put with a new spin on it for a new generation that's a little more diverse, and we get to push the stories out there a little bit more. So whatever, get over it.
That was straight to the point. I love it.
Also, remakes have been around since like forever. So,
but how do you feel about remakes in general? Maybe not even about the High School Musical franchise.
If I enjoyed whatever the remake is as a child, I'll probably check it out in my adult life. If I didn't watch whatever's being remade, then I probably won't watch it.
I love what you said about how the new High School Musical that you're in really mixes nostalgia into something new. And I think that's the perfect marriage of an original and a remake.
I think it's fine to use the term Latinx instead of Latino or Latina, because it's more inclusive, but so many people are saying it's culture erasure. You're getting deep here.
That's what we're all about.
It is kind of crazy that I identified as Latino, and then one day I woke up and all of a sudden, like, someone else has decided that now I'm Latinx. I had never heard the term before. No one in my family uses the term. No one I grew up with, and I went to a high school where about like 60% of the students are Latino. So it is kind of crazy now that like when we do like press and interviews, like that's what I'm referred to as. I'm like, who decided this for me? I like referring to myself as Latino. I like looking at my mom and saying like, oh, that is a Latina, or like my sister, like that is a Latina. When it comes for a whole culture, I think it gets tricky.
Absolutely.
Because Latinos are also very proud people. So it gets like a little, I mean, I don't know. Because again, I'm like, who decided this for everybody?
Do you feel pressure to use the phrase Latinx now in order to kind of conform with?
If I'm being 100% honest, I don't use it because again, I didn't choose to identify as that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if I like it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's your truth.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's interesting seeing how language evolves with inclusion.
Sure.
Right?
And that's the thing too, like I want to be open to changing with the world and making sure that my perspective is always open and always inclusive to a lot of other people. It's hard when you didn't get to pick, what you're being referred to as. It's a little strange.
Yeah, it's strange.
Especially when you had gone your whole life being something and then all of a sudden, like a press thing comes out and then that's what you're now identified as.
Absolutely. And it becomes more complex when you talk about the Spanish language as a whole, right? Because
Totally,
everything is masculine, feminine, O and ah.
Yeah.
And seeing how I think people are trying to propose a new ending to different words. So how can we be more inclusive while also retaining history? It's
It's gonna be tricky. And I just hope I'm as like on the side of progression as possible.
Yeah, for sure, me too.
Oh my gosh.
What does it say?
We all knew that Ryan in the original High School Musical was gay. The movie should have acknowledged that. Okay, here's the thing. As being now a part of this Gen Z world where things are a little less, gay and straight, was he gay? Do we know?
That's the question.
We don't know. That's because we were never told. We don't know. That type of representation was so small during that time. We want to attach onto anything, but he never told us. So we don't know.
What do you think?
I don't want to assume. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Any of the characters could have been gay.
Do you think that was intentional to make you really question and think and not label someone?
From what I've read and what the creator Kenny Ortega has said, he pushed for that. But I think there was maybe some pushback or something. I'm trying to get better at meeting people where they're at. And unfortunately, we are still so behind when it comes to people expressing themselves and stuff.
Yeah.
And even now, we meaning me and Joe being the face of these openly gay characters, we get a lot of flack too. And if something is posted, it's just the most disgusting, small-minded comments that you could think. I understand the fear of a company not wanting to go all the way too much too quickly.
Sure.
And I think especially it gets tricky when it's catered to children. At the end of the day, it's kids are so smart and kids are gonna make decisions and kids have thoughts. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think if anything, adults are putting that pressure on children to think a certain way or be a certain thing. But literally a child's purpose is to wake up and want to have fun, right? When you were a kid, isn't that, you just want to play.
That was the sole purpose
You
of
want
life.
to play all day. You're not thinking about all these other things is Ryan gay and how does this affect me? Do you know what I mean? You're looking at I love the music, I love the costumes, I love these characters. I can't explain why I relate to all of them, but when I'm an adult, maybe I'll watch this back and be oh, that's what I was looking for. But I don't know. Ryan never told us he was gay, so I have to meet him where he is. Truth be told, any of those characters could have been gay and just not told us.
Right. It just makes you wonder why there was an intentional choice not to name it, if that were the case.
Sure.
But I think that's intentional. And I think for all intents and purposes, it's amazing seeing on your show now, it's also not something you have to name.
Sure.
It's just who you are.
Carlos has never said, I'm gay. The same way,
Correct.
when we met, I didn't say, hi, nice to meet you, I'm Frankie, I'm gay.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right. So there's something so refreshing about that. And I know we're not all the way there, right? You're still getting comments online.
Yeah.
There's still some pretty awful people out there. But the fact that we are seeing that representation again, where people can just exist as they are, is really refreshing.
People should play roles that are their own age. Nobody believes that a 30-year-old actor is 16 on screen. I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I think it's all about chemistry and it's about essence and best person for the role.
Do you think that backlash is warranted? For example, what recently happened with Evan Hansen, or where you see the original High School Musical cast getting flack for being in their mid to late 20s when they played high school students. Is there any piece of that you think is valid?
No, I think it's back to if this is the biggest burden you're gonna carry or what age people are playing on screen, I think you've got to find a hobby or something, because it's it's so minor that it's a moot point.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
I feel you. I have been thinking though, in preparing for our conversation today, when you look at authentic storytelling on screen, I think there's a different push now to try to find talent that represents a part to a T. right?
Sure.
I don't think they would bring someone on to play Carlos who is straight. Does that extend to age? Is that a piece of identity that we think needs to be matched with the character in order to feel that it is authentically represented?
I think you limit yourself to a very almost like small pool. I don't know. I can imagine that would be a nightmare for casting.
Absolutely. And the point of acting is to act, right?
Right.
And be something that you maybe aren't.
Yeah.
But I just think it's interesting seeing how nowadays people really want authentically casted characters. Does age extend to that?
Cancel the Real Housewives franchise. We do not need to glorify this behavior. Excuse me.
For anyone who doesn't know, Frankie's Instagram bio very proudly states that he is a future Real Housewife. So I know this one hits close to home.
No, do not cancel it, because then I will have nothing to talk about. I understand where people are coming from in saying that like some of those women do behave terribly and are monsters. People are gonna have different opinions than you, and people are gonna be fired up about their families, their lives, their works, their careers. And I think it's important to remember that those types of people exist. And the great thing about The Real Housewives is that it really puts these women in the driver's seat to be like, how are they gonna respond? How are you gonna react? I've learned so much about standing up for myself watching The Real Housewives, because there have been so many times where you're told certain things, or do you know what I mean? Like sometimes people push your buttons, and sometimes I've been a person to be like, oh, okay, minding my own business, like I'm not gonna get into this fight. But at the end of the day, like some of those women really do have to stand up for themselves, and some of them do it better than others, right? I'm not gonna like break a glass over a table.
Sure.
It has taught me that it is okay to stand up for yourself, and it is okay to have a difference in opinion. I don't wanna like fight about it, but I think it has taught me that it's, you know, it's okay.
I've never seen the franchise, but I love that for you. I love that there's a meta meaning beyond the surface.
Yeah, and you know, it's also like, I think inspirational too. I mean, my inspiration has always been from women who like make me laugh, and that's what these women are doing. And to see them, you know, sometimes they go off and like start their own businesses, and you know what I mean? I always say it's like interactive Barbies. They're like real life Barbies that like, they're like, have these like different careers and stuff, and the fashions and stuff. And so I think if you're choosing to focus on the bad behavior, sure, it's fun to watch, but there's so much more.
I've got to watch.
Frankie, drop a hot take. The hottest take I have right now are celebrity relationships. I don't care. I don't care how long they've been dating. I don't care when they broke up. I love Jennifer Lopez, idol. But if I never had to hear about like her like marriage ever again, I'd be just fine.
Sure. Is this like a Kim and Pete subtweet?
Oh, 100%. I don't care. Like, let them live their lives. And like, I think it's weird that we have an interest in it.
Absolutely. It's definitely a cultural thing.
Because like most people like are in relationships. So it's like weird that we like focus on these specific ones.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
I definitely grew up reading like J14 and Tiger Beat and all those magazines where it would just be celebrity relationships. And I don't know. It's a weird part of our culture.
Weird.
We shouldn't talk about celebrity relationships. Not even your own.
I think we shouldn't talk about it in the way that like we are accustomed to now. Like every little like detail is like dissected. Like Kim and Pete went to go get pizza. What does this mean? It's like they like literally probably just went to go get pizza, and it probably doesn't mean much more than that.
That is valid. But Frankie, thank you for responding to those POVs and taking us home. We are a show and a platform for Gen Z voices to be heard. So if you had a megaphone right now with one message that could reach our entire generation, what would it be?
Our entire generation, and I love the way this Gen Z generation does it, but like be yourself, express yourself, have fun. You're this age at this specific time for like one moment in your life, and it's gonna change and evolve. Clock in for the journey.
And thank you for setting that standard. I think you are really trailblazing a path for people to follow.
Thanks.
So thank you for being here. Thanks for being on POVz, and excited for all our conversations to come.
I love it.
Bring it in.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
You're the best.
You're the
Before you
best.
go, can we take a selfie?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.